The average MDCP in 3D is of the order of a pixel size within a slice. Hausdorff distance is a lot more due to some large errors in some points. So 13 exams of 6 patients and 277 slices. So Dr. Bogue was very patient in drawing all these boundaries over hundreds of these slices for all of these organs or parts. So next, the two models that we used for the diaphragm were also applied here, the linear least squares and then active contours. And we get the refined pelvic surface here with the hard bones shown here in white. So then we can remove the pelvic cavity from the data set. So we have the thoracic cavity. This is the diaphragm. So the thoracic cavity has been removed. This is the abdominal cavity, and now this is the pelvic cavity. There's no separation, the pelvic cavity as such, but we are using the surface fitted to the pelvic bones as the surface to separate. So it's not a completely separated region as in the case of separation between the thorax and the abdomen. The AC is on, but I don't know, that should get cooled down. Anyway, the pelvic cavity as such, as we call it, is removed. Now the landmarks identified are the lungs, we'll give it a little break. So we have the landmarks identified, the ribs, all the bones, and the spinal column, the spinal canal within that, the pelvic bone, and then we can separate the lungs. Using the diaphragm, we can separate the thoracic and the abdominal regions, and using the pelvic surface, we can separate the pelvic part of the image. So we are essentially left with the abdominal part in which we want to segment the tumor due to neuroblastoma. We're trying a few things, let's see. So the tumor due to neuroblastoma, the nature of neuroblastoma is that it's a malignant tumor. It originates along the sympathetic ganglia or in the adrenal medulla, as shown here, and accounts for 8 to 10% of all childhood cancers. And most of the tumors, 2/3 of them, are located in the abdomen. And abdominal tumors are common and have the worst prognosis in terms of outcome for the patient. They're generally heterogeneous mixture of necrosis, low density, shown there, viable tumor of medium density but higher than other abdominal organs, and calcification of high density. There could be scar tissue also not shown here. When the patient is subjected to chemotherapy, radiation therapy, a combination typically, then the response expected is that the tumor shrinks. And in the tumor, as we have seen already, intermediate density indicates active or viable tumor, low density is necrosis, high density is calcified tissue. And the calcification part increases as the tumor responds to treatment and the cancer is killed, to use a common language there. So for the same patient here, from 2001 April to September, you see the tumor in approximately the same section. There are different images at different times, but approximately in the same section, the tumor area is reducing, volume I'll show later, and compared to this, there is more calcification, even more calcification. And the other tissues are reduced in fraction of the total volume. That is the expected response to treatment. So now we want to apply our methods to analysis of response to treatment, not diagnosis. And that could guide surgery later on. There is what is called delayed surgery for resection of the tumor. If the tumor is shrunk, previously the boundary between the tumor and the liver is not clearly defined. And after this response to treatment, it may be more efficient to remove the tumor surgically. Or if the cancer, the viable tumor cancer cells are completely destroyed and it's mainly calcification, surgical resection may not be performed. It may be just left that way. But in a case like this, it is unresectable. There is no clear boundary. This boundary was drawn by the radiologist. So where is the boundary between this and the liver and the kidney, which are all pushed around? So in that case, it is not resectable and the aorta is inside. So it is not possible to remove the whole tumor. So this treatment, of course, is necessary. So there is a whole sequence of operations here. The patient undergoes CT exam and also chemotherapy. The image is segmented and histogram of the primary tumor is computed. We have used the Gaussian mixture modeling to estimate the composition of the tumor. We get the model parameters and we do comparative analysis with respect to the previous images of the same patient. The patient undergoes chemotherapy and there could be biopsy or delayed surgery. There could be histological analysis of tumor viability and other pathology information, do comparative analysis and validate the method. We couldn't do all of that due to lack of data and lack of funding, but we did some part of that. So all of these methods I described earlier, the idea was that eventually all of this landmarking and removal of unwanted parts in tumor detection would help in segmentation. The segmented tumor volume was the final aim of this entire project. It worked to some extent, but not very good. The segmentation of the tumor was performed. A region within the tumor mass was manually selected. Now you give a region to use as a marker in opening by reconstruction. Not, if you want, I can just give one seed voxel, but better to give a region so we can compute mean and standard deviation. But in a heterogeneous tumor, mean and standard deviation may not mean much if you include various types of tissues. The fuzzy mapping function, we have seen this before. You have the mean and standard deviation for reference, and R is a pixel in the image. The selected region is used as a region marker and reconstruction performed. This reconstruction is opening by reconstruction, not CT reconstruction. To obtain graded components using fuzzy mapped images as mask and the region marker. And the image is thresholded using the mean and standard deviation parameters. It worked well in the case of homogeneous tumors. Of course, it has to work in a neat case like this. And the final result of segmentation is nice, but not in other cases. In the case of a heterogeneous mixture, it just goes everywhere. Of course, it did not go into the vertebral column and the bones because we already removed them. So we still had a lot of issues with tumors of this nature. I can't just say, well, my method works well for this tumor, but not for that tumor. So we had these issues. In the case of a diffuse tumor also, the final result was not good. So we just showed the results here of landmarking as how landmarking could possibly help, but the end result on neuroblastoma segmentation was not good in this work to this extent. When we tried to get more grants, there were some other issues that came up. Perhaps some of you who are faculty members have experience in obtaining research grants. You have to make a proposal, you have to show why the work is relevant, and your technology must be new and some originality should be there, innovation. You should show that something better will come out of this. But in some part of this process, some things go wrong in philosophical sense. So we gave all the statistics. We are required to say how many people in Canada come up with this problem. In the case of breast cancer, yes, it's a large number. Prostate cancer, large number. Lung diseases, large number, possibly due to some bad habits like smoking and so on. Neuroblastoma affects children, so it is important. And similarly, retinopathy of prematurity that I'll talk about later on affects a small fraction of newborn children and premature children for ROP in particular. But that number is small. And the granting agencies say, well, there are only so many people in the whole of Canada with a population of less than that of any Indian state, 40 million now. There could be 20, 30, maybe 200 cases per year of various types of these situations. They say, well, it's not a big problem. But of course, for those who are affected by these conditions, it is a big problem. There are radiologists and medical specialists still dealing with this problem. But anyway, lack of grants, we could not continue, so it stopped here. So here is a case of a homogeneous tumor which was not difficult to segment, but in other cases it just did not work. So we are showing where it works and where it did not work. Diffuse tumor, again the segmentation just went everywhere. All of this pre-processing helped a little bit, but the result is still not good. So let us skip all of that, and then I'll show you what we wanted to do. Okay, you saw that. So we did all this landmarking, and here is one of those examples, and that's the tumor. So the ribs, the vertebral column and the spinal canal inside it in sort of that red brown color, the pelvic girdle, the tumor. So in this case it worked well, but not always. The next step we wanted to do was to analyze the follow-up of treatment of neuroblastoma or response to therapy. So not only diagnosis. So for this we made use of the contours drawn by the radiologist. Now this is, in business practice it is bad what I'm doing. It is called bait and switch. That is, you must have seen advertisements. They say, oh, I have this car for 1,000 rupees. And you go there, they may say, well, that car is sold, you have another car here for 1 crore rupees. So they want you to buy that. But the advertisement shows you something. And then the customer is baited, lured to come in. Then you try to sell something else, you switch. But that's, I'm telling you clearly, this is hand-drawn contour. We could not get to that level of detail and precision for all tumors. So here is that example showing good response to treatment for this patient. And to estimate the tissue composition of the tumor, we used a Gaussian mixture model similar to what I showed earlier for the, anybody remember that? Where did I show Gaussian mixture modeling last week? I should put that on the test. What's that? No, which application was that? The fibroglandular disc of the mammogram, we broke that into multiple types of tissue. The same thing here. So there is the overall histogram in the dotted line, very thin. It's a little hard to see. The black line almost completely overlaps that. The 3 Gaussians obtained in this case are shown here. 1, 2, 3. The Gaussians for the first image in that example. When you add the 3 Gaussians, you get this dark black line which matches well with the actual histogram in 3D of the tumor for this case. So here, they're all of intermediate density. The first one has a mean around 50 or so, or maybe a little higher than 50. The parameters come later. So that is mainly abdominal tissue. This has a little higher, could be tumor. This is a little higher, could be viable tumor also. I said earlier, viable tumor could go up to 90 plus some standard deviation. So one of these could be the normal abdominal tissues, and the other two could be related to viable tumor in that range of Hounsfield units, minus 100 to 900 Hounsfield units. So in this case, you have to retain the original values of the data in Hounsfield units. 3 Gaussians. 1B, the same patient 2 months later. So there's one here which is in the abdominal tissue range. The other two have more than 100. In this case, the mean is around 300 Hounsfield units. Clearly, these two are calcified tissues. So there's more calcified tissue. And the histogram has already gone that way. Oh, by the way, I think I switched. The black is the original, and the dotted line is the sum of the 3 Gaussians. And the third case, you saw it was almost white, mostly calcification. 3 Gaussians again, and the solid line is the original histogram. The fit by adding the 3 Gaussians is that line shown there in between. And the 3 Gaussians, this one is already more than 100, about 110 or so mean. Calcified tissue, maybe viable tumor, I'm not sure. I can't say for sure. And this is about 200, and that is 400 mean. So clearly calcified. So go back. This is mostly in this section. But in other slices, it could be different. So now we have the parameters for the 3 Gaussians, mean, standard deviation. So for the first image, the first Gaussian is actually 64. So that could be normal abdominal tissue. Second is 94. That could be viable tumor. 134 could be calcification, could be viable tumor, I'm not sure. And there is partial volume effect always. As you come here, from April to June, these components, lower density components, have come down in proportion. So this is 94. That could be viable tumor. Maybe there is not much of actual abdominal tissue left in the tumor. Shouldn't be there in the segmentation. This is 175, that is calcified tissue. This is also calcified. And as you go here, 114, this could be viable tumor. The other two certainly calcification. So the calcified part has increased in proportion. The mean, standard deviation are here. The weight of the Gaussians shown here. So the weights of the higher density calcified tissue parts have gone up. That is what is expected in response to therapy. So this is quantitative analysis of response to treatment of the tumor using manually segmented regions. The volume of the tumor, it was 500 centimeter cube there, or more than that, almost 800 and something. No, sorry, that is 500, about 550. The volume is on this side, and it has shrunk quite a bit. We analyzed a few cases like this and showed the results back to the radiologist and published a paper, but could not go beyond that due to lack of funding. But we showed what is possible to be done. That is all I have for this topic. I have other topics, so what I intend to do is, I had offered in the original plan to give the seminar, the lectures on the lecture notes from the book up to chapter 8. I thought it might take maybe even today and tomorrow, but I went a little faster to make space for more research-related seminars if possible. So we have done one more which contains some background material related to morphological image processing and some other modeling techniques, and you saw some applications related to my students' work. And we have one more on analysis of MR images of vertebral compression fracture, which I may do tomorrow. And then I have one more on architectural distortion mammograms, which I'll do either tomorrow or day after. Then I still have some more time left. So I will include possibly 3 more research-related seminars. One is on color image processing. We have a textbook on color image processing. I'll give you a brief review of that, an hour and a half or so. And if Dr. Raghavendra agrees, he is the boss here. So if he agrees, then we will put 2 more topics. One on retinopathy of prematurity, the project of my last PhD student, detection of blood vessels and characterizing vascular architecture in the retina of premature babies. And then one on fractal analysis, if you're interested. Would that suit your interest? If not, I don't have anything. I'll have to sing and dance or do something else. Is that a good plan? Then Dr. Raghavendra will bring in additional seminars by Dr. Shyam and Dr. Narasimhadhan, you heard him yesterday. And you'll have to ask Dr. Raghavendra. He said he will be the last one. If there is still time left, but you could offer suggestions to him as to what are the topics you want to be covered in the remaining part until Friday. Friday afternoon, we'll have your test. Oh, by the way, let me show that to you. I had opened that, but then I lost the connections. Some of you have been asking me where to find this. So if you go to rangayyan.ca, this is what you will see. So go on the engineering side, and if you scroll through, you will find something about myself and the books. But if you go under this book, you have the table of contents of the book, but as I said, second edition coming, maybe not this year, next year perhaps. If you take up this tests and reports, get the zip file and unzip it, you will see some tests, and there are many of them. You don't have to go through all of them. For the last 20 years, I have taught this course many times, so there are multiple tests. And for some of them, I have written the solution, and I have, I think, also put solutions written by a couple of my students. So if you want, I can go through them. If I download this, I'll have to unzip it. And even without unzipping, I should be able to. Okay, it'll show the. So lots of these tests here, and for 2 of them we have the solution. So you can take a look at them. Don't worry about the lab reports and project reports. My students were required to do lab reports and projects, and some asked for examples, so I put them there. So there are a number of these tests. If you want, I can take a look at them. The test will cover, your test will cover what we did last week, based on the book, not what we have seen now. These are all related to our research work, but many of those concepts have been illustrated again with applications. And although some of the your test questions are related to these, I have tried to make them simpler because yours is a rapid course in 1 week, which in Calgary would be spread over 13 weeks with lab exercises. So it takes time to all of these to sink in with some lab work. But we'll try to keep it simple so you can write brief answers. Each one will be less than half a page, a quarter of a page or so. Did you have something to say?
your webpage, mammography data set was there, some zip files, downloadable and these people.
Not mammograms. I cannot give the mammograms from the screen program. There are public mammographic databases. MIAS is old. DDSM is also old. The mammograms we got from the Foothills Hospital or the screening program cannot be shared. The contours drawn by the radiologist is what I have. If you want to do shape analysis, just the contours, because there's nothing related to the patient and they're just contours. Those are available, and I don't know what else I've put in there. There are some pictures also if you go to that same updates and corrections, mammography data sets. What do I have there? There are some image files, images that I have used in the book, some of them, if you want to download and use them. What do I have? I think these are just contours of tumors and so on. Yeah, there are 54 contours of tumors, 57, and mass boundary, mass contours, breast boundary contours, pectoral muscle, and so on. But they're all outdated. I don't think you should work on these. These are outdated. The research area is saturated. But if you still want to work with them, they are available. Some people had asked, some researchers had asked for these, so I put them up. If you want to listen to my music, you can go there. But that's not here, so I finished a little early. Any questions? Let's have. Well, I don't think I'm causing that, right? It's happening somewhere else. Somebody else is making that. Any questions? I have. Your tea won't be ready until 2:30, is it? So we have.
Will not be ready.
Will not be ready until 2:30. So no point in getting up now. Any questions or discussion?
The study you just presented.
You have to speak up so others can hear you too.
So the last study that you presented, so it was a timeline of images. So in 2 months gap, are there any such timeline images available for doing some study?
Again, those are not public, and those are outdated. They're 25 years old. So for each of these projects, we have to get ethics permission from multiple committees, from the university and from the hospital and the cancer board. And now it is coordinated. Our applications go through all of these. And if I want to share with somebody, I have to go through another process, give the name, who it is, and why. And it can be done. But now I've been retired for 10 years, so I can't get those images.
In these images, there were some data sets, public data sets regarding Alzheimer's study. So they are standard public data sets. So they provide this kind of timeline images.
Okay. So nowadays, as I mentioned once, the National Institutes of Health in the US and many other research organizations, when they give research grants, they put a condition that because it is public money being given to you for your research grant, any data that you acquire and create must be made public. That has been around for perhaps 20 years or so. So under NIH, there is a big library of biomedical signals, especially for biomedical engineering. So from there you can get a lot of data. But the data must be annotated, otherwise they're useless. So you'll have to search for data where the images have been marked and some additional information is given to you in terms of what has happened in these images and what is the change from one to another. In most of our cases, we have created our own databases. We have used public databases where available, and sometimes we have done cross-training, train on this and test on that. So for each project, you'll have to look for a suitable data set or create your own using locally available collaboration and data from hospitals. To be locally relevant and to have collaborators who can participate with interest, you need to do such work with local medical specialists, local meaning in your region, not necessarily in your city, and develop a project that would have some result that is of interest to them too, and that could possibly help the outcome in that hospital for patients. So that would be my recommendation in terms of data. Getting data from elsewhere would be good perhaps for publication, but then you have to compare with what's being done. But if it is locally relevant, then you may be doing something that could benefit your collaborators, benefit your neighboring hospitals, and could lead to important original developments and work, rather than taking some other database and doing some incremental research on top of what's being done. In our timetable, we had put time for discussion. At the end of each day, we did have brief discussions. Some of you have come and talked to me individually, but do you have any other questions? I could start my next seminar and keep going, keep talking. Any other questions?
What is the plan now? You have to move.
You tell me. If I start something, I can do for 20 minutes or how? And then I can continue tomorrow, of course.
3 o'clock is a tea break.
3? Oh, then I'll start my next one.
If you're tired, then we'll give some class.
No, I'm not tired. I had enough coffee and sugar. No other questions or concerns? Okay, let me move on to my next topic. I won't stop. Tea will come only at 3 o'clock, I'm told. Okay. So let's take up our next topic, which is image processing for analysis and classification of benign and malignant vertebral compression fractures using MRI. So this was a project of Dr. Marcelo Henrique Nogueira Barbosa in Brazil and his collaborator Paulo Mazzoncini de Azevedo Marques. Paulo is an electrical engineer like me and like most of us, and I'm there, and Marcelo is a radiologist. And Lucas and Guilherme were research collaborators. Lucas came to Calgary to do a part of his work with me. In Canada, they consider my name to be very long. Even in India, perhaps Rangaraj is not so common, but many of us have long names. Raghavendra is longer than us, for sure. And if you expand his initials, it'll be longer than mine. But in Canada, they say, oh, your name is long. I say, well, cut it and say Raj is fine with them. But when I went to Brazil, I found that their names are much longer. And many of them have 2, 3, 4 given names. It's common to have 2 given names, maybe 3. And the father's name and mother's name are both brought in, family names. You don't take only the father's name. And in most of Latin America, in Brazil, the ordering is different. Father's name and mother's name, family names. Like Marcelo Henrique is his 2 given names, and Nogueira Barbosa are the family names of the father and mother. In here they would use just the last, they may hyphenate, they use the last name, which is the father's name. But in the rest of South America, the Spanish part of South America, they may write like this, but they use the mother's name. So you would call him Dr. Nogueira in the rest of South America, but in Brazil you would call him Dr. Barbosa unless they combine like that. So here this is his mother's family side and that is his father's. So you have even longer names than mine. So they don't have a problem with my name. So this is one of our research projects with the University of Sao Paulo. I've been going to Brazil for the past 35 years. I've been there more than 50 times and given many of these courses and lectures and collaborated with many researchers. So some of the results I showed are from my collaborators in Brazil, including this one. So here the interest is in what is called the vertebral compression fracture. It is not fracture like a bone is broken, but one of the vertebrae or a few of them could be compressed due to some compressive load, and then it is squished and misshaped rather than broken to pieces, and that would happen too. So here the spine is shown in the sagittal slice going this way, and this is the lumbar part of the spine, and this is a vertebral body, and that is the intervertebral disc. So in a section, sagittal section, there appear to be almost rectangles in MR images. So the analysis was limited to L1 to L5, the lumbar spine. So what is this VCF business? VCF is partial collapse of vertebral bodies. And when there is trauma, that is somebody has fallen or fallen from a height and land on the feet, then there is big compressive force on the spine and there could be fracture, and then you know it was caused by that fall. But sometimes in the elderly, it might not be such a big traumatic incident. It could be something fairly small like putting too much load somewhere and maybe a small step. But then there is no clear trauma, but there could be a fracture. So vertebral collapse without history of significant trauma creates difficulty in finding out what caused the problem. And there are some different types of situations that could cause VCF. A young patient with a vertebral compression fracture and a history of acute trauma is usually easy to diagnose. But in the case of an elderly patient with VCF with no history of significant trauma or acute trauma, then there is a question about diagnosis as to what exactly caused the problem. And these are the most common type of osteoporotic fractures. Fractures caused by osteoporosis, loss of bone density. The elderly have a high incidence of VCFs related to also cancer, metastatic cancer affecting bone. The cancer could be somewhere else, and it affects bone, and bone density is lost, and there is fracture. MRI is commonly used for detection or diagnosis of spinal diseases and fractures. So CT doesn't help much here. MRI is commonly used, and these images are from the city of Ribeirão Preto in São Paulo state in Brazil. So here are, that clearly is not me, I'm not doing that. So here is a case of the fracture. The others are almost like squares. And here there is a concavity and the shape is totally out compared to the others. So that is osteoporotic. Metastatic is different. There is loss of density and replacement with fat. The shape could be normal, or there could be some small shape difference. So it is approximately, there is some concavity there, but it's not totally misshapen like that. And the others are okay. There is some fatty area there. This is totally replaced by fat. And there is some shape distortion. So osteoporotic VCFs are classified as benign, meaning not cancer. Caused by osteoporosis, it is not normal but benign. Metastatic VCFs are classified as malignant VCFs in this work. So in T1 weighted MRI, There is partial preservation of normal fatty bone marrow signal in the vertebral body, benign condition. There is spatially limited loss of T1 signal intensity, that is, there could be some dark areas. There is degeneration of the normally rectangular shapes of vertebrae into concave and rough shapes with indentations or concavities. And the contours are rougher than malignant VCFs and normal. So, very rough shape. Again, in general, not every one of them. In the case of malignant VCFs, again in T1 MRI, there is reduction of T1 intensity or nodular abnormality all over the affected vertebra. So the entire vertebra has loss of bone density, and there could be nodular, there could be some little nodules inside. Could result in a posterior convexity without substantial concavities. I'll show you that. Posterior meaning towards the back, there could be a bulge. The others, normally it's like a rectangle or a square, sharp edge. But in the case of malignant VCF at the back, there could be a curving outward, convex. May also cause the contours of the vertebrae to be relatively smoothened. So there is some shape loss. There are some indentations which mean complexity, but there is some smoothing due to convexity, which means the opposite. So things get a bit more complex than what one could imagine in this situation. In the malignant case, benign is usually straightforward. So this is a normal, you can see, you want me to turn the lights off or is it okay? Okay. So in the normal case, in the abdomen, all of these appear almost like squares. As you go into the lumbar region, the shape changes. As you go into the thoracic region further up and into the neck, they become like triangles. So the shape changes. It's only here in the lumbar region in particular that we get these rectangular shapes. Benign VCFs, you see this concavity, and this is, it appears like it's broken, but it's being compressed. That's a clear concavity. This is a malignant case. There is concavity, but there is convexity, what is called the posterior convexity or bulge. We don't see that here. We don't see that here. So these were the observations given to us. Compare also the signal intensity. The signal is low here compared to this, compared to that. Unfortunately, in MRI, the actual T1 values are not retained and given to you in the output like Hounsville units. You just get a JPEG or TIFF image. Normalized pixel values 0 to 255, and you only can do relative analysis. I asked about it, they said, well, it's not there. It's called T1 weighted, T2 weighted image. I don't know why they can't provide actual values. So both malignant and benign cases tend to create concavities, and this could cause doubt in diagnosis, and correct classification is critical for planning treatment because the treatment is different for benign and malignant cases. So there was a question. Lucas prepared a big PowerPoint file with sequences of images. When I change it to PDF, all of that animation is lost. And I don't do that, the animation in PowerPoint. I just give the whole thing. So here is a benign case. This is malignant. There is some loss of signal here. There are concavities and shape roughness there. But this is nodular. You can see the nodules there, black little patches. You don't see that here. So the this is benign, that is malignant, but it's not so clear cut. So the objectives of the study were to look into the characteristics of vertebral compression fractures in MRI only, develop image processing techniques and classify them as normal or fractured first, and then if it is fractured, benign or malignant. We also tried 3-group classification. So some cases were selected from the hospital through the database, the hospital information system and the radiology information system, HIS and RIS as they're called. HIS is the hospital information system, RIS is the radiology information system, but pronunciation changes as you go around the world, and R and L are interchanged in China and Japan. In Japan they can say R. This is old, but currently I'm sure they can all speak, taking into account the language. But R is there clearly in the Japanese language, but not L. And in China, R is pronounced differently, and they would say my name as the R becomes almost like a La. They would say Rangayyan. So in Brazil, like in French, if there is an H at the beginning, then it is not pronounced. The hospital information system is HIS. In English, you say HIS, but in French and Portuguese, you say IS. And RIS, RIS, the first R is not pronounced like R, but H. So it becomes HIS. And so IS, HIS, HIS, they all sound almost the same. There is some confusion about pronunciation. And also the first R becomes Ha. And in Brazil, words don't end with a consonant. There should always be a vowel at the end. Like in Kannada, it is Raja, not Raj. There they say Haji. They put E at the end. So in different parts of the world, my name goes through a lot of morphological changes, especially R and J. J also is Ya in German and Ha in Spanish. Anyway, manual segmentation of vertebral bodies. When I said HIS and RIS, these things popped up in my mind. Extraction of features of vertebral bodies and classification, validation, and statistical analysis. That was Lucas's work. So University Hospital of Ribeirão Preto in University of São Paulo. University of São Paulo, by the way, is the largest university in all of Latin America, not only South America, but also Caribbean included. And I've been going to the University of São Paulo in the city of São Paulo and also Ribeirão Preto for many years. The cases and images were collected from this RIS, and 2010 to 2014. Lucas came to my lab in 2015, my last year of work there. Philips 1.5 Tesla and T1 weighted. So we concentrated only on L1 to L5. The protocol was set up by Dr. Marcello. The median sagittal slice was taken. So later on we said, why not 3D? And some of this work was done in 3D by Paola from Italy. We didn't get any substantially better results in 3D. TIFF images, 8 bits per pixel, 153 exams, 63 were selected. And some statistics, 38 women, 25 men, mean age 62 years. In clinical research, you are required to give all of this information. At least one VCF per patient, and the non-fractured vertebral bodies of patients without malignant fractures are considered to be normal. If there is a malignant fracture, then there could be metastasis affecting the rest of the vertebrae, and we didn't consider them to be normal. There were some cases excluded, vertebral fractures due to trauma, infection and avascular necrosis, degenerative scoliosis where the shape changes quite a bit, previous surgeries, radiation therapy, and chemotherapy. The database, we had so many L1, L2, L3, and so on, and that many number of benign and VCF, malignant and normal cases, or vertebral bodies in particular. I won't read all those numbers. So here are some examples. This is how we typically start our projects. Get a number of these examples of different categories and sit and look at them and try to understand what is happening, what are the distinguishing characteristics, what are the confounding factors. So normal, except for rotation and small imperfections. These are hand segmented. Benign VCFs, that is clearly out of shape compared to that. And this has some loss of signal, as I call it. Loss of signal means the intensity is low, T1. Malignant, darker, and some nodularity. And sometimes it could be partial. This part is low in signal. This part seems to be okay. But concavity, posterior convexity, and maybe even here. So there is some shape roughness caused there, but shape smoothing caused there. So you have the opposite effects. So manual segmentation, there was some animation, I tried to remove it. So these areas were marked, and we got, I won't go through the flow chart. We got these regions marked by one of the radiology residents and checked by the radiologist. So L1 through L5 in this case. To normalize the images from the data of each patient, we marked, these regions were given, the green lines were given by hand labeling. We found the bounding box marked in yellow, and between the bounding box of successive vertebral bodies, we have the disc. And knowing the value of the disc relative to the other parts of the image, we obtained a small window, 5 by 5 block within the disc, delimited using the boundaries of the vertebral bodies as marked here. And a simple algorithm was able to locate them accurately in all of our images. So we used, we extracted blocks of intervertebral discs using these masks as regions of interest, and then obtained a 5 by 5 block of pixels within the disc, these discs, and averaged them to get a reference value. And the scaled image was obtained as the original image divided by the mean of the disc values and normalized back to 0 to 255. So for a given MRI, these masks were used and the regions were extracted. These regions were marked and the bounding boxes were drawn. And these are some examples again, similar to what I showed earlier with their bounding boxes. So some basic statistics were computed. Basic statistics, as we have seen, 14 texture features from Harlick and 10 shape features, a total of 27 features. The coefficient of variation is the ratio of sigma to the standard deviation to the mean. Skewness and kurtosis are the third and fourth order moments. You have seen all of this before. Kurtosis is the fourth order moment. In grayscale, there is some more difference that you can observe. Normal, malignant VCF, malignant, and benign. So you can get some idea about these. Again, see the nodular loss of signal intensity, as I call it. In this case, there is a large area of loss of signal intensity. Here, the whole body is affected by loss of signal intensity. Here, it's about 3/4. We saw some of that. So from the gray level co-occurrence matrix, we got the measures of Harlick. We don't need all of that. Oh, these, I thought I had removed all of these. Let me get rid of all of them. Compactness you have seen, perimeter and vertebral area. Lucas wanted to put all of the basics also in the presentation. So the Fourier descriptors, we have seen this. Take the coordinates as complex quantity and take the Fourier series of that. He normalized it in a different way. In this case, instead of dividing by the index k, we took a certain cut point k1 and took the frequencies on the higher side, harmonics greater than K1, K1 going, or K going K1 to N over 2, and minus K1 to minus N over 2 to plus 1 on both sides of the spectrum. So high frequency energy, normalized by the total energy of all the Fourier series components. So this is simply a fraction. This is the fraction of the high frequency energy with respect to the total energy. But what should be K1 is the question. And by experimentation, we determined a band of frequencies where we found some discriminant information. The convex hull is illustrated here. I have shown you this already. This is the vertebral body. The yellow line is the contour drawn by the radiologist or in consultation with the radiologist, and the green line is the convex hull. The convex deficiency is the difference between the two normalized with respect to the vertebral area. Moments you have seen, I skip all of this, we have seen whose moments. These were all put in. So there is nothing new here except the Fourier descriptor perhaps. Fourier descriptors are not new, but the definition of that fraction of high frequency energy with respect to the total energy in the Fourier spectrum. So he created this vector with all the features and the class at the end. There is the software Waker from New Zealand, and he used that with the wrapper method for feature extraction. With the k nearest neighbor, with k going 1 to 13, odd numbers, the naive Bayes method and the radial basis function neural network. These are the basic methods of some of the basic methods for pattern classification, linear discriminant and quadratic discriminant being others. All of these are described in the last chapter in the book. I don't have a PDF file of that, or any textbook, Duda and Hart will give you that. So there was feature selection included in this, and the classifiers were essentially the same, and tenfold cross-validation was used in the sense the given data set was broken into 10 folds, 9 for training, 1 for test, and it was repeated a number of times to evaluate the performance of the classifier and to get some average statistics of the classification performance. So the classes are, there is a fracture or not, BCF or nothing, normal. And then benign versus malignant, or 3-class, malignant, benign, normal in one step. So if you want, you can do 2-step classification. Do this and take the VCFs and then do this classification. Or do all of that in one shot. So Lucas prepared all of these: confusion matrix, sensitivity, specificity, area under the ROC curve, percentage of correct classification. The p-values were obtained in the Wilcoxon-Rank-Sum test. Is that in the computer? Where is that sound coming from? Not me.
Box.
Oh, the box. I'm not touching this, right? Should I put it somewhere else?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Just grab it.
That's not, yeah, it's disturbing. So we got a lot of these tables for all of the features, and I won't go through all the numbers. Let me go to some of the summary. Those numbers are there in the, you have a PDF file of this also. So, benign VCFs versus malignant VCFs. There is high statistical significance, and AZ is area under the ROC curve, for texture and gray level features. The Fourier domain factor was also highly significant. That is to separate benign versus malignant. So there is already an initial classification, we assume. Next, all VCFs, all meaning both types of VCFs versus normal. Texture and gray level did not perform well, but shape factors did. More of the shape factors showed high significance. So, I mean, this is understandable in the sense normal vertebral bodies are clearly rectangular in shape, and both benign and malignant fractures exhibit shape change. Convexity, concavity, both of them could have concavities. So shape factors played a strong role in the detection of vertebral compression fracture. After you do that, take those fractures and do benign versus malignant, and that is where the texture played a role, because the internal details have different texture in the two categories. Both boundaries could be rough, or boundaries could be rough in both cases. And the frequency content in the Fourier descriptors was also significant in benign versus malignant classification. So we did this statistical analysis and also prepared all these illustrations of the mean and standard deviation of various features. And skewness is interesting in benign and malignant, and normal versus malignant. Malignant is skewed to the left because of the darker pixels. So skewness plays a role in separating malignant from benign and normal. And some of the heraldic texture features also seem to have good separability. Convex deficiency, normal versus malignant versus benign. So there is increasing convex deficiency as expected. So skewness for malignant VCFs is higher than that for benign VCFs. T1 signals are distributed more on the lower side of the histogram for malignant VCF. The Fourier descriptor values are on the average higher for benign VCFs than for normal vertebrae because of the shape complexity. And FDS values are lower for malignant VCF than for normal. So in the case of malignant VCFs, there is some smoothing of the boundary due to that posterior convexity. So FDF values are lower for malignant VCFs. So in this manner, we analyzed each feature, and feature selection was done automatically using the wrapper method for classification. But we need to understand each feature as to how each feature behaves or contributes to classification. So FDF, the Fourier descriptor factor, is significant for benign versus malignant. It was selected for all classifiers that we tested. It is not significant for all VCFs versus normal. That is, if you were to do that as an initial step. And so on. I won't read all of them. So various texture features were selected for both types of classification, and depending upon the classifier, the naive Bayes method selected the highest number of features. So we need to also look into how many features are selected. If too many features are selected, then the next step of classification may have some inefficiency. The summary of the results using KNN, K nearest neighbor, with the number of neighbors being varying from 7 to 13, we got accuracy rates in the range of 81 to 84%. The area under the ROC curve up to 0.9. With the naive Bayes and RBF radial basis network, we got similar results in the same range, nothing drastically different. If you were to ask the question of is there a fracture or not, that is both types of fractures versus normal vertebral bodies, we got slightly better results. Area under the ROC curve going to 9.5 or 9.7, and accuracy rate going close to 90%. I think I have already mentioned all of these factors. We did some studies where we had only some of these data. In a previous study using only shape factors, the highest area under the ROC curve was 0.78. So in this study, we included texture and gray level features, and that took the accuracy higher. So first we concentrated on shape. And then we brought in texture and statistics of gray levels, and we got much better results, especially for malignant fractures. So shape is not everything, texture is not everything, and a combination of the two can give you better results than either of those two types of features. We also did three-way classification. The results were not much better. The accuracy rate was 82% like the others. Weighted, in this case, you cannot have one ROC curve. You take multiple ROC curves, and the weighted average was 0.94, not bad, 82, similar to the previous. This is the confusion matrix. You would like all the elements to be on the main diagonal, but there are some misclassifications, as you can see. So some malignant vertebral bodies being classified as benign or normal, and some normal being classified the other way. So this is the correct classification along the diagonal. So depending upon the problem posed in terms of what you are classifying and the pattern classification method used and the feature selection method rather, you may get different features selected. So in this case, a large number of the features were selected, almost all of the halalic features and 3 of the moments and the other features we defined. That's perhaps too many features for this data set. We put these as limitations. When you write a paper, you are expected to discuss what are the limitations of your study. Always, the database is not large enough. And manual segmentation is one. We thought automatic segmentation methods could lead to better results. But one of our collaborators tried automatic segmentation, and the results did not improve further. And individual and separate analysis of the vertebral bodies ignores important information outside their regions. We are classifying each vertebral body separately. Can we somehow bring them all together? But then not all of the vertebral bodies are fractured in a given case. 1 or 2 lumbar vertebral bodies may have a fracture. The others may be just normal. So there's not much of other context. We have used only the sagittal plane. So that's one of the limitations. Only the median sagittal plane, where the particular shape we have seen shows up clearly. In this case, some lateral fractures may be misclassified. If fracture is only occurring in the other dimension, then you may not capture that. But it was felt in the formulation of the project by the radiologist, not felt, but through experience and observation. The median sagittal slice was selected because that showed most of the cases. But that is still a limitation. Extension of segmentation and feature extraction to 3D is desirable, we said. That was also done by one of our collaborators. I said Paola Casti in Italy. She did this, and I was told, I was not involved in that project, I was told there was not any substantial improvement in the results. There are other complications that arise when you go to 3D. The radiologist hasn't seen these things in 3D. So the observations of the radiologist, based upon which we have noted all these properties and developed these methods, those observations have been made in 2D. So we think that maybe there is something more in 3D, but that was not the case. And even in the case of lung tumors, some features were extracted in 2D and 3D. And there wasn't much of an advantage. In fact, 2D worked better. So the reason for that could be that the clinical observations have been made in 2D. And we don't know if the same thing occurs in all slices in 3D. So these were noted, and some of these were done in subsequent studies, but did not lead to anything better. A limitation is that only T1 weighted MRI was used, and benign VCFs are known to have iso-intense vertebrae in T2 weighted and T1 weighted MRI after gadolinium contrast injection. But malignant VCFs are known to be heterogeneous or have high signal in T2 weighted and in T1 weighted MRI after contrast. So it is possible that T2 may have some other information, but we didn't have T1 and T2 in this database. So most of these features that we have used in this project are important in the sense they have been selected through feature selection methods and they have contributed to pattern classification accuracy. For benign versus malignant VCF classification, the area under the ROC curve values of texture and gray level features are higher than those for shape. But for all VCFs compared to normal, shape factors contribute more to the classification than gray level and texture features. So depending on how you formulate the problem and the classification step, shape or texture will be useful. But if you want both, then put them all together. But again, you should try to minimize the number of features through feature selection. And with the wrapper method, you'll be using the classification procedure that you'll be using later after feature selection. So the same pattern classification method is used in the evaluation process too, feature selection. So that way your feature selection is specific to that classifier. It's not unrelated to the classifier. So that may be a good strategy in feature selection. And then you can say, okay, I want to use this pattern classification method. How many features are being selected through the wrapper-based system or method? And if it selects too many, you can say, well, I don't want that many features, try something else. There are a few interesting trends. The features, Fourier descriptor factor, and CV is, what is CV? Oh, the ratio of the mean to the standard deviation follow opposite trends, coefficient of variation. The Nile-based classifier was the best classifier in both types of classification, and the conclusion is, yes, these methods are promising. I don't know what else has happened after that. It all depends on funding and the availability of research students and researchers interested in the project. I know that they are building a larger database, but I haven't worked on this project with the Brazilian team after this. Some other work has been done, as I mentioned, but I don't have the results of those here. So those are some of the funding agencies in Canada and Brazil and collaborators. And my website, in case you haven't noted, this appears at the end of all my PDF files of lectures, and my email if you want to write to me later. I skipped a number of steps of texture analysis and statistics. We have already seen all of them. So it's not necessary to go through all of them. Any questions? Am I going too fast or is it okay? Any questions or comments?
This is an MRI kind of studies. What about the X-rays? Is it possible, like other modalities?
X-rays won't show that detail because of superimposition of all the structures. You want the sagittal slice or one slice through the vertebral bodies without any interference from the other structures. So no, X-ray will not show that. We have done some work.
Modality advantage, maybe CT, MRI.
MRI is commonly used for this. CT doesn't have that same discriminating power. CT gives you good spatial resolution. MRI also now gives good spatial resolution. So Dr. Marcelo, who is a radiologist, has told us MRI is what is recommended for the analysis of spine in general, and the vertebral bodies and compression fractures. That's established clinical practice. We did some work on analyzing fractures as seen in X-ray images, projection images. We have some results based on shape, but texture won't be reliable because of superposition. Shape, you may still be able to extract the contours, but they may not be as clear as in this case. MRI is expensive. In Calgary, as I said, it's not easy to get into an MR scanner. There are long waits. But it again depends upon the condition of the patient. Something that is urgent will be handled. Something that is not so urgent, as determined by the doctors in the emergency room, they will decide as to who gets immediate help and who goes home and suffers for months. Well, here we are in hard tissue. Compression is of the vertebral body, which is hard bone.
You can concentrate on the tissue in between.
Yes, we can see the intervertebral discs. Yes, and we can see the contrast between them. But the vertebral bodies themselves are hard tissue.